Welcome back, everybody, to Nuts and Bolts Sports. Rod, Jordan, Henry here, as always. First sort of official off-season episode. I know we've done some recaps and we've looked back at the season that sort of passed, but I guess this is our first sort of filling in the gaps between when the season finished and when the next season's going to start. I think we'll hold off on talking about the start date and whatnot because we don't have official confirmation on that. It's still kind of speculation, but I guess it's just important to throw out there up top here that the NBA is now saying that they could be starting right around Christmas time. So that was a little earlier than we originally expected. I know Jordan's not a fan.
That is a crime to the Lakers and the Heat. That's another podcast.
Yeah, we'll save that until we get official confirmation, just because we don't want to spend too much time on it and get turned around or whatever, because there's been a lot of backlash and whatnot. People are not happy about it. So wait and see. What we're doing here today, we're going to talk about top 10 players transitioning from this past season going into the next season. Who are our sort of top 10 in the league right now as it sits in this exact moment. And I think we're going to disagree on a lot of these. I think there's definitely some that we will agree on. Should I just swat it here right at the top? It's Alex Caruso is not on our top 10. Sorry, Jordan. I'm sorry. It's just not going to happen.
Have you looked at the advanced numbers? Have you even looked at them?
All right, give us your case right now. I'll give you 30 seconds. I'm starting the clock. 1:57. Go.
Yeah, I'm going to just pass my time.
But yeah, I think this is an interesting conversation because I think the momentum and the sort of shaking of where the league sits and whatnot right now has kind of changed in a lot of people's eyes after this season, with the stuff that we saw in the bubble and whatnot. I'm sure recency bias will play a little bit of a role here. It certainly plays a role on my list. But let's just go ahead and get right into it. We're going to go one by one from 10 to 1. And Henry, I'm going to toss it to you first. Who's your number 10 going into next season?
All right, my number 10. Okay, so we're going 10 to 1?
Yes, sir.
All right. It's pretty interesting. I got Jamal Murray at number 10.
Wow. Okay.
So I know it's a big statement, but honestly, what we saw in the playoffs, I can see him easily transition that into the regular season for next season. Still, I don't know. We don't know if there's going to be fans. We don't know, how that's going to play a factor and everything. But usually, when players have a breakthrough like that in the playoffs, they tend to transition that into the following season, and then that's where they catapult themselves into superstardom and everything. And Jamal Murray put up numbers that we became normalized to when he was dropping 50 apiece with Donovan Mitchell. It's just some things we don't really see. That's now I feel like we've entered a stage in the NBA where averaging 30 points a game is normal now. So Jamal Murray can fall in that category, and I can easily see that happening for the Nuggets. So I have Jamal Murray at number 10. So if you guys hate it or love it?
I don't know. Do you have any response to that, Jordan?
So that was my number 18. No, I mean, Murray's obviously great. He had a breakout. This whole show, just like with anything, is one of those schoolyard debates, right? Everyone's going to have their opinions and facts. So it's whatever you bring to the table. But for me, Murray brings some good things and he's a great scorer. And obviously he did take a step forward. He had an amazing playoff run. You got to give credit where credit's due there. But for me, I thought there were still some games where he disappeared and kind of didn't show up. Disregarding the games he wasn't hurt. And then, defensively, it's not like he's somebody that impacts. My top 10 list is, for the most part, you have to play some semblance of defense. There's one guy on my list who I'm sure we'll get to who, even though he doesn't play a lot of defense, you have to completely take over the game in every other facet. So it's just a little tough for a guy like him to crack it yet. I mean, I think the word is yet. He is young, right? I mean, we could be talking differently in a couple of years.
I agree with that. I think it is a matter of time before he's competing at least for one of those top 10 spots. I don't think he's quite there yet. I think that 18 number, whether that was a random number, you actually did list it out that far. That's pretty close, actually. I think that's pretty close. Somewhere in that 17 to 25, he does fall in that range. I think especially after this playoff performance, and Donovan Mitchell's up there as well. I think, spoiler, he's not in my top 10. But Yeah,
That was my number 16.
He certainly has the potential to get there, and it could happen by next season, like by the end of next season, if we redo this entire thing. We could very well be saying that Jamal Murray, yes, is going to crack that top 10, but I think right now he's just that much outside. Who's your number 10, Jordan?
Well, thank you. I'm going to take this time actually to reflect on what the year was for the Lakers and their championship. I was with that.
I was about to kick you out of the room.
I get muted all of a sudden. Number 10 for me, it definitely includes a little recency bias, but I think it's well deserved given what we saw from this guy during the playoffs, really all year. This is a guy who has bounced around from several teams over the last couple of years, been called a bad teammate, someone who's not good in the locker room, someone who's not helpful, but at the end of the day, this guy put on some of the best finals performances we've seen, went toe-to-toe with LeBron and Anthony Davis and took 2 games off of him, and that guy is Jimmy Butler. Again, maybe a smidge high. I feel like if I do this list in like 2 months, I may move him down a spot or 2, but I think given everything that we've seen from him on and off the court over the last year, plus just the overall body of work, I think he's earned that 10 spot for me right now.
I spoiled it to you, Jordan, when we were still sitting in the waiting room and before Henry came on, but I have the same exact number 10, and he kicked off somebody that I think people are not going to be happy that I kicked off. But yeah, Jimmy Butler's also my number 10. Just because, yeah, exactly what you said. It's the recency bias thing. It's entirely the recency bias thing. He gives it to you on both ends. And I guess another little mini spoiler alert, that's why the guy that was kind of competing with him for that number 10 spot did not make the number 10 spot, because Jimmy Butler giving it to him on both ends. And Jimmy Butler took his team to the finals. Like, I know Bam and Dragic were big parts of that team, but Jimmy Butler is the reason that team went to the finals. I don't care what his points numbers say. I don't care like what the statistics say on their surface. He is almost the sole reason.
I have waited like 2 months to play this.
He is more or less the sole reason that team made it to the finals, and he certainly had some exceptional pieces around him, but he bounced back from so much adversity and is now like amongst the most, like, from going from like one of the most hated players in the league to one of the favorite players in the league. It's a crazy journey. It's a crazy story. It plays a part in this whole narrative thing, and it's just fun to put Jimmy on here. I don't know, Henry, what do you think about Jimmy being on? Is he higher on your list, or is he not on your list at all?
He's actually higher on my list.
Oh, okay.
He's higher on my list. So
okay, we'll get to that in a second then.
But it's the whole recency bias. Like, I understand that, but it's just like he was probably LeBron's biggest challenger in these playoffs.
Yeah,
because he swept through the West. It was no competition. Like, he had players like James Harden, Damian Lillard, Nikola Jokic in his way, and it was like they weren't even a challenge to him. Jimmy Butler, he's the one that captivated me the most, and for him to do that, especially against a LeBron team led by obviously LeBron and Anthony Davis, even though they only won 2 games, they were still the only team in the playoffs that beat the Lakers twice. Yeah. No other team did that. No other team was able to do that. And then that one game where Jimmy Butler had that 40-point triple-double, and he was like laying on the sideline with his head down. I was like, all right, no, I don't care what anybody says. He is a top 10 player. That's why I had Jamal Murray at 10, because I was like, okay, I can't have Jimmy Butler at 10. So that's why, like, again, a little spoiler alert, he's at my 9. So that's why I have him higher, but not as much higher. But I'm with you guys on that. Like, he's in my top 10, a little bit higher, but recency bias. I'm interested to see if he's going to carry that on into next season. Because it's just that whole like element, that whole factor. Like, is that going to carry on? Blah blah blah. Is Tyler Hero going to get better? Like, are all the pieces around him going to make him better as well? So I'm interested to see that. But Jimmy Butler is a little bit higher for me.
Okay, let's wait and see. Well, who's your number 9 then?
That was his 9.
Oh, that was his 9.
That was my 9.
He just went 10.
Gotcha.
Really well.
Gotcha. Okay. So that was your number 9. So Jordan, who's your number 9 then?
Number 9. Where are we at here? I gotta see my list. Number 9. Another guy who had a really big postseason, but I think has also been knocking on the door of this top 10 list for about a year and a half, 2 years. So I don't think this is as much recency bias as it is him deserving to be here. I have Nikola Jokic from the Nuggets there. Obviously had a phenomenal postseason, picked apart the Clippers throughout that entire series and that 3-1 comeback, and was still pretty good against the Lakers. Even though their Western Conference Finals loss, there's not too much he can't do, right? I mean, the 3-point shot can be a little bit better, and he could be in a little better shape, especially to help out on defense. But I mean, the guy is he's one of the 3 or 4 best passing big men, that we've had in this league ever, literally ever. End of discussion. And he's only 24, 25 years old. It just his vision's insane, his playmaking, his creativity. So I expect him to be. He's 9 now. I think he could rise even more by the end of next year.
Okay. Jokic is my 8, so I can talk about him a little before I get to my 9. And yeah, for a lot of the reasons what you're saying, it does come down to the 9 and the 8. This was another one that I was going back and forth, and I think both of you guys are probably not going to be happy with the switch that I ended up making. But I think that Jokic has just shown us, and just being 25 years old, how much he can do with that team. And I know Jamal Murray came to life in these playoffs, but this is still Jokic's team. And when it mattered most against that Clippers team, that's when Jokic showed up, and that was, I think, even more pivotal than it was in the Jazz series for when Jamal Murray showed up. And Jamal Murray was still great in those follow-up series, but Jokic is still the leader of this team. I think there's no question about it. And it does come down to the lethalness on the offensive, and not just passing, but scoring as well. Like, you could just see, he just backs his way in. It's ugly, but it's effective. And, like, if it works, it works. And I'm not going to fault him for that. I have 80 at 9. I picked Jokic over 80. Listen. I think Jokic has done more for his team in a shorter amount of time than AD ever did with the New Orleans Pelicans. I think that's pretty fair to say. And Jokic is younger, and that's where he got the edge for me here. AD had to go team up with LeBron to win games. He couldn't win in New Orleans. He just couldn't win in New Orleans, and that was the biggest thing. Like I said, it was kind of going back and forth here. AD is obviously going to give it to you much better on the defensive end. I still think Jokic is a better offensive player. But it does come down to the sort of success that they have. And AD, I know he just won a ring, but the success solo was not there the way the success was there for Jokic solo.
Oh, I wish I still had the photo. I still had the photo of Rajani Davis. That's just. I almost want to go first take on you, but that's just that.
Do it. I dare you.
No. It is your birthday. Out of respect, AD is higher on my list. We'll get to that. I just think, and I think Jokic is great. This isn't like me disliking him in any sense, but I just think that if you gave me the choice between the two, I'm gonna take AD every day, twice on Sunday.
We had this conversation in our little group message, like in the second round of the playoffs. I think Jordan sent us a poll from ESPN or something that was like Jokic or AD, and I took Jokic in that conversation. And I said the same exact things that I'm saying here, so I'm just repeating that.
I know I respect you sticking to your guns. It's just. Yeah. I don't know. For me, the players, if I'm thinking of guys going into next year that I want, I'm picking there. But hey, to each their own. If you want to be wrong on your birthday, you want to be wrong on your birthday.
I'll say about 80. Come on, top 10 is still top 10. Like, he's not my number 9. Like, he's incredible. He showed up in those finals. He proved me wrong in those finals. And that was very much certain, and something that I was sort of doubting him going into the finals.
I'm scared to think now, if AD didn't play well in the finals, where you would have had him. You might have been like behind Rudy Gobert or something.
Here's the thing. Like, when I say like superstar, I'm thinking top 5, and that's why I say that AD is not a superstar. It comes down to the top 5 criteria, and AD doesn't fall into that criteria. And like I said, I was going back and forth with this 8 and 9 as well. Like, it was a tough choice for me, and the guys that I put above him, I just like a little bit better. The defense offensive conversation is interesting. I don't think he's close even to the players that I have in my top 5 right now.
Wait.
Go ahead.
Real quick question. So for you, Raj, your top 5 is considered bona fide superstars, right? So anything after that is not a superstar?
They could be falling into the superstar. It's like top 5 is like sort of the lock superstars, and anybody that falls outside of that, they're making a case for themselves. But I think, looking at what I have in front of me right now, I think anybody that falls in my 6 to 10 is not a superstar, and everybody that's in my 5 to 1 is a superstar.
There's a lot of superstars in this league. There's a lot.
Raj is tough. Raj is a tough person to get on his list.
I feel like you got to brand, like, if you're going to brand somebody a superstar, they've got to be the elite of the elite. And like, that's not just in this league right now. That's elite all time. And like, if you look at the elite all time, I don't know if my 6 to 10 after the 2020 season is going to be elite all time. They could be. They very much could be. Some of these guys definitely could be, but I don't know if they're there yet.
Okay, so to confirm, AD was your 9, Jokic was your 8.
Correct, yeah.
Do you want to add anything more about Jokic than we kind of talked about?
No, I've spoken about Jokic.
Yeah, all year, trust me, we've heard it. All playoff series, I heard it too.
Everybody knows Jokic is my number 3 guy in the league behind LeBron and Luka. So like, I love Jokic, and that bias is obviously going to play a part in here. I really don't give a shit if people hate me for it. Like, it is what it is. I love Jokic. I'm going to put him here at my 8, and I'm happy with it.
So Henry, who do you have at 8 then?
All right. I was a little delusional when I was making this list. So like now, like I'm
Kemba
looking at
Walker.
yeah, I'm
Kemba
looking
Walker.
I'm looking at my no, I'm looking at my number 8. So you guys are gonna hate me for this, but I changed my mind, thankfully.
Okay.
I had Embiid at number 8, but then I was like, wait, I didn't even have Jokic in my 10. I'm
Okay.
crazy. Yeah, I was like, okay, that's an easy swap right
In fairness,
there.
this is tough to do. I told Raj before you even got on. I made this list, and I'll tell you guys at the end who I forgot initially. And I made the top 10, and then I was like, oh my God, I forgot player X. And I had to like redo the whole thing because there are so many names. So I can understand that aspect of leaving somebody out.
Yeah, because the thing that I was like a little like just worried about was like, okay, there's players coming back from injury that are superstars.
Mhm.
So that's the thing. So it's like squeezing them in that list. Are they
Tough.
worthy of the top 10? Yeah. So then
How are they going to be?
somehow Jokic slipped out of my list and I got Embiid at number 8. So excuse me for that. I got I got Jokic at number 8. I feel like I keep one upping you guys on that list. So I don't know who my number 1 is gonna be. But yeah, obviously for many reasons. He was a huge reason why the Denver Nuggets made it to the Western Conference Finals for the first time in like 11 years. Credit to Raj, I agree with you. He's winning in Denver, something that Anthony Davis couldn't do in New Orleans. But sometimes it does take. I mean, but the thing is Anthony Davis had absolutely no help.
Jrue
in New
Holiday is
Orleans.
a great player.
Yeah. Okay,
I refuse to accept that Anthony Davis had no help. Jrue Holiday is a great player. JJ Redick is a good player. Like
but
he
Jrue
had solid
Holiday,
help down there.
Jrue Holiday is not
Oh, no,
even a
JJ
top.
Redick came this season. Never mind.
Jrue Holiday, yeah, Jrue Holiday is not even like a top 20 player. Like usually, help is a top 20 player at least.
Sure.
Aside from that, who do we have? Tyreek Evans, Quincy Pondexter,
Solomon
all
Hill.
those. Yeah,
Alex
Solomon Hill.
Ajinka, Omar Ashik. He got saddled with a poo-poo platter of teammates for like 2 or 3 years.
So like, and then Alvin Gentry, great coach and everything, but just didn't work out. But what he did with LeBron, it was just like, okay, I can't let LeBron do everything. He had to elevate his game too. So I keep talking about AD, but just credit to what you were saying. But Nikola Jokic, he's barely gonna enter the prime of his career. And even though like he came back slimmer too to the bubble, he had COVID and everything, but I feel like that helped him. He doesn't run, but the way he slings the ball and everything, it works to his advantage because yes, I agree that he is probably already top 5 best passing big man in NBA league history. I don't think there's any more like to argue about that. People just see how capable he is. He like leads his team in assists. He's the definition of a point center. So that's something that I know Anthony Davis can do. So credit to Nikola Jokic. Plus, and he hits one leg fadeaways at the 3-point line. When you do that with a guy in his structure, I'm like, okay, you're worthy of number 8 for me at least. So that's my number 8 right there.
Structure is the right word to use. I don't know if there's another word that you can use there. What's your number 8?
So after this, I feel like maybe every couple of picks we can just like recap like what we have so far, just so everyone can kind of keep it clear. Sure. So like I said, I had Jimmy at 10, Jokic at 9. 8 was weird, and I guess I'll just come out and say it's James Harden. And you would have thought like a year or two ago that 8 would be like ridiculous, right? You'd assume he'd be like top 5. He obviously won an MVP 2-3 years ago, so you think the Houston fans would be super upset to hear that. But I'll be honest, I just have like Rockets and James Harden fatigue. Like I'm tired of that, and it's like you've heard me call it all bubble. And since we were doing this back in March, it's a gimmick. It's a full-on gimmick. What he does, what his team has done, especially when they decided to go small. Now, the other side of that is that he's perfected that gimmick pretty much, right? I mean, the guy's scoring 35 plus a game. For another year, I think he hasn't scored under like 28 or 27 a game, basically since he got to Houston. He's been phenomenal on that end. One of the best, ISO players this league has ever seen. He's a master at drawing those fouls. Whether you hate it or not is irrelevant because he still gets them. You can be upset or not. He's going to get them every game. But obviously the knocks are there, and I think the blemishes outweigh the other positives on his resume, and that's the continued failed playoff runs where the team's expected to go far. Maybe not so much this year. They obviously they were underdogs against the Lakers to a degree, but in the past, I mean, how many times have we seen him falter in the playoffs and have some just horrific closeout games year after year after year? And so I just think I've like stalled out on him. Like maybe overall talent wise, he might be a little bit better than one or two of the guys I have ahead.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, like I know what I'm getting out of him every night, and he's going to keep his team in it. And to his credit, he's also very durable. He's there almost every game. You know, they talk about it with LeBron James, but Harden also is very, very durable. And same with his production. His production doesn't really waver that much in the regular season. He's going to get his points and his assists, and he is creative, distributing on his own terms, I think, which is key to highlight. But I just think that I've kind of tired out of it, and I think I can't really put him any higher than this, especially when I'll make the case for the guys ahead of him. But yeah, I got him at 8, which I think would have been weird to think 2 or 3 years ago, but it's where we're at.
I agree with you. In like a year or two ago, like that would have been kind of ridiculous. But he was the guy that Jimmy pushed off of my top 10, so he's not in my top 10. And it does come down to the fact that how many seasons in a row now it's just been like the same thing. Yeah, you can go out there and win 50 games, but like if you're not going to get anywhere in the playoffs, it doesn't do me any good. I really don't care if you're not going to get past the second round. Like
I'm never worried about them in the playoffs. Like
No, especially like coming into this into this Lakers series, they won the game 1, and everybody's like similar to the Portland series. They're like, oh my God, are the Rockets going to start to steal these games? Is that small ball going to work? And it's just like, no, it's like you said, Jordan, it's a gimmick. It's a gimmick. The whole entire thing that the Rockets have been doing, building around James Harden, is a gimmick. And I've been one of the few champions I feel like that's been pushing like just get Harden out of there. Like it's been how many seasons now, and it's just not working. I know they're going through a coaching change and all that as well, but like it's just not working. And recency bias does come down to it. And to fall at 11 out of however many players are in the league, like that's still not a knock on the guy, but like I just couldn't put him in my top 10, especially when Jimmy Butler took his team to the finals and James Harden could not get out of the second round again. Like it's just I could not get him on there. Is he on your list, Henry?
Oh no.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah, I have my list like right here, and then when Jordan brought up James Harden, I looked at my list and I was like, wow, he's not on my list.
No, I mean like.
But,
go ahead. You got
it. No, but it's exactly what you were saying, Raj. It's just like it doesn't do a franchise or a player any good if they don't get anywhere in the playoffs. Like you can be like, that crap that Jordan was talking about, like in terms of like averaging 35 points, is it a gimmick? Is it a gimmick? Is it really not? Like, I don't know, he's still a bona fide scorer, like to me, but I do understand that people, are tired of him, just drawing fouls and everything. His play style is not the most popular in the NBA. So that's enough for a person who is a player who was averaging 35 points to not make the top 10. It just goes to show that, Raj, there are too many superstars in this league. Yeah. Like I really do believe, like, and I'm like, okay, if a person if a player that is averaging 35 points a game doesn't even crack, our top 10, then obviously there's going to be some snubs, like it's just a league. I feel like this league we're the golden age of the NBA right now, where there's just so much competition at every corner that if you look 10 years ago, I think a top 10 list was like not even debatable. It was pretty clear cut, but now it's just like there's just so many factors to it. When it comes to James Harden, he just didn't do it for me. I saw the Rockets as a threat only when they had Chris Paul. When they had Chris Paul back in
I knew Chris Paul's hamstring was going to go sometime in the second week of May, and it usually did.
And that's the thing. Like I knew if it didn't, the Rockets were the biggest threat to the Warriors, and winning that game 7 and everything. And obviously we all saw what happened. I think the Rockets were like 0 for 25 from 3. That was on them. That was no fluke right there. But just not being able to make it past the second round, or back to the Western Conference Finals for since like 2015. It's just, to be a top 10 player in this league, you got to do something about that, and it's not usually the coach's fault as well. I know you're trying your hardest as the leader of the team, but does he really lead, or does he just score, or does he just flop? Up to you guys.
That's a good question.
I want to say, I think you bring up an interesting point that I want to just quickly talk about. I think that you are correct in saying that like 10 years ago, like let's say we're in 2010, I think it'd be very easy back then to rank the top 10 guys, because I just don't think we had as much access to stuff, right? We didn't have as much access to all these highlights and to all the advanced metrics and to all, Twitter wasn't quite what it was. So we didn't have all this like talk. Because like, let's be honest, like you go on Twitter and like you see 1,000,001 things. It does, whether like I like to admit it or not, like it does start to shape my opinion too. Like you see all this, whatever the information is, and eventually it does start to influence you. Plus, like I said, just the lack of kind of information. Like 10 years ago, you basically had like the main big stats, right? Your points, rebounds, assists. PER was, I think, still pretty prevalent. But we didn't have like, win shares and wins added and total points added, stuff like that. So we had like those big counting stats. PER was the only advanced stat, and you had the success of your team. and in what you saw in highlights on SportsCenter. And that's I guess it made it easier in a sense because it was like, okay, go back to 2010. We got, LeBron and Kobe for the top spot, and we got, Durant on the rise, and we got Chris Paul, and like that was like pretty simple. But nowadays, like your top 10, as you're seeing with all three of ours, varies by what you're looking for and what you value more. And everybody nowadays has so many options to choose from of what you value that it causes everybody's opinions to naturally be different. It causes these lists to be, and it's not just us, it's SportsCenter, it's First Take, it's Undisputed. Besides them doing it for the theater, those guys legitimately all have different ways of thinking about it, and it comes on, in the form of very different lists. So I think that's a very interesting point, and you're correct in bringing that up.
Yeah. Henry, what's your number 7?
Okay, my number 7. I don't know if he made your guys' top 10, but I have Steph Curry at number 7.
He's much higher for me.
Okay.
Ooh,
see,
much.
I would love to hear what you have to say, Raj, because I probably do agree. But the thing is just he's coming back to a much better league in the span of a year. Luka Doncic and all them, like all these young players, they're just rapidly growing. I think that's the difference 10 years ago. We just have players come in a year or two, their improvement in the league is just so much more quick and just a lot faster than what it was, in 2005 or 2007 in that age of the NBA. It's not, these guys are like genetically modified now. Like it's kind of weird, like to see Luka Doncic was like breeded as like a 16-year-old professional basketball player. Like, okay, like this is the future of our league. So now Steph Curry, he's over 30 now. I'm not saying like, oh, he's slowing down. I'm just saying like, okay, he needs to go back to being the guy on the Warriors. I thought it was going to happen this season. That's what I was hoping for. But then again, wrist injury, Clay being out, they didn't even make the playoffs, and then boom, the pandemic happened and all this stuff. Mm-hmm. But now, he's going to have Clay back. Andrew Wiggins, hopefully he improves. And then I don't know what the Warriors are going to do with their pick, but I still believe that. I saw an article on the Athletics talking about that the Warriors are going to be the biggest threat to the Lakers in the West. And I was like, that's not even a reach. Like Steph Curry changed the game. Yeah. Steph Curry changed the game, in the 2010s in our new generation. So for him to continue doing that and to see like, can he still drop 400 threes a season? Can he still do that? Can he average 30 points a game and not play in the fourth quarter like he did back in that 2016 season? I'm interested to see, but the thing is, like, because of that injury and him not playing, it's going to lower him obviously to number 7 instead of the top 5. But for me, I got him at number 7. Jordan, what do you have?
So I have stuff a little bit higher, just like Raj does. So I'll say my piece on him when I get to him. 7 was another guy that was tough, but I'll explain why I have him here. I have Kevin Durant at 7, and here's why. I love Kevin Durant. I think. You're here, right here from me. I thought when he tore his Achilles in the finals, he was the undisputed best player in the world, and that includes your boy LeBron. Mm-hmm. I would have gone to war that he was the best player in the league for the last 2-3 years. LeBron had like a case for part of 2018, but I thought Durant was just, especially going into those playoffs in 18 and 19, mm-hmm. he was just on another level, right? He was carving everybody up. He carved the Clippers up. He carved up everybody they ran into. There was nothing he couldn't – like I thought he reached his peak, right? There was nothing he could not do well. Really on both ends of the floor. His defense had gotten much better when he got to Golden State, and his offense was his offense like usual. And the Achilles is such a tough injury.
Yeah.
Yeah, me from firsthand experience, who my favorite player is Kobe, seeing him push, and he came back, and he pushed a little too early and came back, and that really hurt him, I think, the rest of his career, in addition to the fact that he was 34 years old at the time. Durant, thankfully, is not quite there. I think he's, 30 or 31?
Yeah, 30. He's 30.
30. Okay, so he has that going for him, which I'm happy for. And I think the bubble and this break was actually the biggest break for the Nets because he's had an extra 6-7 months to just fully recover, not worry about the pressure of trying to come back and play against these guys. So I think that's going to help him. I personally just didn't know where to put him. The Achilles scares me a little bit. I think if he just had like an ACL or something, whatever that kept him out, I would have had him probably in the top 4. And I'd be happy to eat those words in 8 months. And if Kevin Durant's one of the 3 best players in the world, I'd be thrilled because I enjoy watching him play. I don't hate him like some people do for him going to Golden State and blah, blah, blah. But I just think right now I'm not until I see him play. I don't know how to properly evaluate that. So I just felt like I probably played a little too safe at 7, but that I played it safe and I put him at 7.
Okay, I'll get into both of these guys in a little bit. I'm also going to say let's pick up the pace because we're at half an hour. We haven't even hit 5 yet.
No, exactly.
My number 7 is number 7. Yeah, number 7 is Damian Lillard. I mean, we kind of saw what he did in this postseason. It was just incredible. But he has similar to the Harden thing. Like he's been stuck in sort of a weird limbo for a while. This season, I don't put on him as much because of the injury problems. And this is when he had his best season, and we saw him going crazy stretch runs. I mean, he was just incredible in the playoffs. One of the most like inspiring performances throughout the entire stretch of the bubble that we've ever seen in the NBA from a single player. Like just incredible basketball. And we're talking about like the fact that James Harden is automatic from here and there. Like Damian Lillard kind of became that. And even before like we saw Jamal Murray and Donovan Mitchell like go off in that first round or whatever. I mean, it was Dame that was kind of carrying that load and doing it and putting on those kind of performances. So I just, it was tough to put him at 7. I wanted to put him even higher because I think like in any other scenario, he is a top 5 player in this league. It's just like, I mean, yeah, like we said earlier, this league is just so talented right now that he did drop to 7 for me.
He's 11 for me. I just kept him out. I just not enough defense on my end. Like I think he's a kind of a liability there. But I agree with what you said. Completely phenomenal performances in the bubble. I mean, that was inspiring stuff.
Sure. What's your number 6, Henry?
I have Kevin Durant.
Okay.
Hey, welcome.
Yeah.
Not too far off. Okay.
Yeah. So, but same thing. It's the injury. Thankfully, because of the bubble and everything that's been going on, he has that time to recuperate and not, hurry back up and probably re-injure the Achilles again. But the thing is Kevin Durant, throughout his whole career, if you look at his highlights and everything, he never really relied on his athleticism. He's more of a, post-up turnaround type of guy. And he's just a 6'10". He's just a 7 foot.
He's a freak.
Yeah.
He's an absolute freak.
That can dribble like a point guard. I know guys in rec leagues that are like 6'2" and can't dribble like that.
Yeah.
They all run like that. So I'm not talking about Jordan.
That's good.
That might be the biggest shot we've ever taken on this.
No, but that's the thing. Like Kevin Durant he just relies on his savviness. Like if you look, and he's just so slim where like, yeah, like he's just not, he doesn't rely on us. Like Derrick Rose, we all saw what happened with Derrick Rose. His game was fully athletic, and now like with that taken away, he's just half of the player of who he was. I don't think that's gonna happen to Kevin Durant per se. We saw what happened with Kobe, but Kobe was a lot more up there in age too. Right. So, and Kevin Durant is going to be surrounded by pieces that hopefully work. I know Kyrie can be a little, a little crazy sometimes, and then Steve Nash wouldn't know how he's going to do as head coach, but Kevin Durant, now that he has championship pedigree, like I feel like his Warriors days individually were overshadow his Thunder days, and not just because of the championship, but because of the confidence he has now in terms of how far he knows he can get. He already has that taste. He already knows what it feels like. So, I saw a video of Team USA just doing some drills, and just Kevin, all of them doing one-on-ones. I'm pretty sure you guys seen it too.
Oh, he just carves everybody up.
Just Kevin Durant, and then Paul George just doesn't know what to do. Paul George not even in my top 20. All right, just wanted to say that. Anyway, but that's the thing. Like Kevin Durant is just ultra too talented to not be in this top 10 at all, and then he's too he relies on his skill set rather than his athleticism, and that's the biggest factor for me. So
it's huge.
Yeah.
I think if you wanted to, I don't think Kevin Durant does, for the record. Like LeBron does, he wants to keep playing until he's much older, kind of like a Tom Brady. But I don't think Durant actually has that desire. I think he's going to tap out at like 35 and be completely fine with that.
Not even the desire, but the ability because of the injuries.
Yeah, but I do think like if he wouldn't be the same Kevin Durant, but he has the skill set to be a pick and pop guy until he's like 40 if he wanted. Like if he just wanted to, if he didn't want to push the issue physically, he might turn into he'd be like a very, very good Andrea Bargnani in that sense of like physically he wouldn't be able to dominate anyone anymore. But I think his skill set lends to it. But I don't think he actually does. I think he's going to leave at like 34, 35.
Yep.
What are we on to 6 now?
6, yeah.
Okay, so 6. So I got Butler, Jokic, Harden, Durant, and number 6 is his former teammate Steph Curry. Again, another guy a little weird to place. The hand injury, not so much concerning because obviously it's just a hand. I'm sure he's totally fine. Again, he had extra time with the bubble. and I love Steph. Steph's probably my favorite player in the league. The tough part for ranking him here, more so because I think under any normal circumstance I would have had him like top 5 or top 4, but he's around the same age, like 30, 31. The defense is not going to get any better. It's okay. It's just okay. But it's not going to get any better. So he's kind of a little bit of a liability there. But he is obviously the best shooter we've ever seen. I think next year we could see the 30-point barrage, like we thought we were going to see this year before the injury. So I do think he definitely deserves to be back in the conversation. I think he's got a little bit of a chip on his shoulder because everyone's kind of forgotten about him and the Warriors over this last year with everything that went on. So I'm really excited to see what he comes out with, and I knock on wood, hope that he's healthy all year because I do think the Warriors could be a tough matchup for anybody, and I hope they get back to that level. It's fun watching good Warriors basketball, but his defense, the defensive limitations, I think just have him just outside the top 5. My top 5 guys. You need to be either super crazy special in your prime, which we'll get to one guy, or you need to be able to do it on both ends, and that's why he's just out of the top 5.
Okay. So what am I at now? Number 6 is Luka Doncic, and the reason I left him out of my top 5 was the defensive thing that you just said. He hasn't shown us that he has that, but on the offensive end, I mean, he's as lethal as it gets. Like he just from the shooting to the playmaking. Like I don't think there's a player. I don't, because LeBron's not as good a shooter as Luka is. I don't know if there's a player that's as lethal on the offensive end as Luka Doncic right now. We'll have to see what happens with Steph and KD when they come back and whether or not they're healthy. But this guy, he just does everything. He does it well on the offensive end specifically. And to be doing that at 21 years old now, he's 21, right? So it's just insane. And I imagine coming into the season, like we saw him take the leap from rookie of the year to MVP candidate. Now you're going to take the leap from MVP candidate to MVP. Like, is it possible? I think it's very likely. He's going to have a lot of, he's got a lot of competition, but I mean, like the sky is like the limit for this guy, and nobody has lived up to the hype the way this guy has since LeBron came into the league back in 2003. And it's just kind of incredible to watch this guy's rise. Like I said, he's my number 2 guy in the league in terms of favorite players. And it was heartbreaking to leave him out of my top 5. But he's going to be number 1 in just like a handful of years. I have no doubt about it. I didn't feel so bad about it. What you got at number 5, Henry?
All right, so my number 5 is
Gordon Hayward.
Is it Daniel Tice? No. I would hate myself. No, my number 5 is Anthony Davis. It's just that individual factor, that
there we go.
About. Yeah, just is that obviously
that's my 5.
Oh, really? Okay. And
very nice. High five. Great success.
Anyways, go watch that new Borat movie. It's good.
That sounds good. Yep.
But AD's on my top 5, or he's at my number 5 because for that individual factor, he just couldn't win alone in New Orleans. Obviously, he needed to team up with the best player in this league, by many people's opinions. So that doesn't necessarily make him, the best player in my eyes. He needed LeBron and stuff, but he showed out in the finals. He showed out in the playoffs. He had that game winner. He was playing in Anthony Davis so dominant that it kind of intimidated me. And I was just watching him. I felt bad because he just oversized and overpowered every single defender down low. That it makes you think that it makes me look back to 2013 Anthony Davis back in his rookie year, how slim and how skinny he was. He put in the work. He's a lot bigger now. He's a lot more skillful. His turnarounds, his threes, and everything that made him good enough for me. That, and he also carried LeBron in points in many, many, many occasions. So for him to do that, I feel like that's the first player since Kyrie to do that. Because there's times where Kyrie will go off for 50, and LeBron will have like 20-something points, and Kyrie will carry the load offensively. Anthony Davis was able to do that, and we're not talking about a LeBron out of his prime. LeBron is still in his prime. This is like a clear cut. Like this man's a robot. But that's why he's in my top 5 because of his performance in the playoffs and the finals. But that individual factor is going to keep him out, from that top 3 list for me. So that's my 5. So Jordan said that's his number 5.
That was my 5. I was hoping to surprise Raj with it, but you came right in there, so that's good. We double teamed him. I mean, obviously, there's definitely going to be a little recency bias for me, given everything that's happened in my standing as a fan of the Los Angeles Lakers. But I think Henry brings up the correct point in that going into the playoffs, as excited as I was, and I was confident, but there was that nagging thing in the back of my mind. I was like, all right, this is AD's first time playing with real pressure in the playoffs. He's playing with LeBron, who is a demanding teammate, as we know. what's going to happen when things don't necessarily go right. And from game one did not go right. And I was like, oh crap. I was like, what if like he just kind of wilts? And instead he did the complete opposite and he turned into an absolute beast. And I thought he dominated almost every matchup he came across, and almost every single game was a force, on offense. He just willing, if you had small guys on him, he was going to feast. If you had a big guy on him, he was going to pull him out and then feast on him and, basically make him pick his poison is what he wanted. On defense, I thought he was maybe a little bit inconsistent in the first round. I know Raj and I kind of agreed on that with Portland, but I thought he picked it up as the rounds went on. He had some big defensive plays. I mean, the block on Jimmy in game 4 was huge. And I think, he's a 6'11", in terms of like overall talent going into next year, he's a 6'11", just freak with this huge wingspan. He can legitimately guard 1 through 5. Like if he got switched on a point guard, there's not many point guards that would make him look silly. I don't think. And, even if they do blow by him, as we saw with Dame and Russ a couple times, they were still not out of the reach because he's just got that wingspan and the instincts to go to the right spot and make a play. And I thought some of the shots he hit, it didn't always look pretty, but he hit big threes when they needed consistently. I'm not talking about just game winner. The big 3 in game 4 of that finals, he hit big threes against Portland. Basically every round, he hit big threes against teams late. But he didn't seem to like overshoot them. Like you see big guys start to Joel Embiid like fall in love with the 3-pointer. He didn't do that, but he was a timely shooter, a clutch shooter, and just eviscerated Miami in the finals. And obviously they weren't fully healthy, but I don't think it would have mattered that much. Nonetheless, he was just a man on a mission. So I just think going in next year, he is squarely in his prime. He's going to have, all the tools around him. LeBron has basically said it's your team. LeBron's perfectly happy to kind of take the back seat in terms of that scoring load every night. And the guys ahead of him are super special, and that's why he's not higher. And I think by the end of next year, we could really be talking about him even a little bit higher on this list.
The top 5 was just ridiculously tough because of the talent pool. And I feel like putting this guy that I have at 5 is also kind of ridiculous. But I had to put Kawhi here because of the guys that I just think are better than. I just think Kawhi is going to. It is hard to even knock guys at this point because each of these guys is just so good.
Hey. That's what he said of that.
The biggest thing with Kawhi is the reason that I didn't put him in 4-3-2 is because you're not going to get a full load of games out of him, and that does make a pretty significant impact for me personally if you're only playing 60 to 65 games a season. And that's not to say that a couple of guys that I haven't said yet that you guys have said that who knows if they're going to play the full stretch of 82 games because of their injuries and whatnot. But Kawhi has shown us that he can't really do that. He might have the potential to do it, but we just haven't seen him out of him in the past couple of years. But that all said, he's just a monster on both ends of the floor. He's consistent. He's steadier than anybody else in the league at this point. That one game in Game 7 against the Nuggets was literally the only time that we'd really seen him sort of disappear. That's just something that he does not do. That's not something that we're used to seeing Kawhi do. Other than that, he's just so steady, so consistent. He's there every single time on the offensive end, defensive end. He can shoot the ball. He can attack the basket. He can guard literally anybody from 1 to 5. Hard to put him lower than a top 3 even, but that's just how good this league is right now. What's your 4, Henry?
The disrespect.
Yeah, it's tough.
I feel like little by little, Jordan's or Rogers realizing damn, there's a lot of superstars in this league.
It's tough.
Yeah,
it's tough.
But okay, so I think we should do this the top 4. So these are my top 4. And I'm gonna explain each briefly.
Okay.
4, I have. Trying to make sure my list is right. All right.
Kemba Walker.
Kawhi Leonard at number 4.
Okay.
Luka Doncic at number 3. Giannis at number 2.
Okay.
And Kyrie at number 1. So the reason why I have Kyrie at number 1 is okay, I'm glad.
How long are you gonna carry that going?
No, I have LeBron at number 1. I don't know what Kyrie's on my list, but okay. So for Kawhi is Kawhi. These past playoffs does not discredit him to me whatsoever. He is the reason he could have ended the Warriors dynasty before he got injured. He carried the Raptors to the first championship in franchise history. He was the first coming up player to beat LeBron in the finals back in 2014 when he was 22 years old. He won Finals MVP. So he already built all that up, and for one playoff to discredit him, that's not for me. He's still in my top 4 for sure. But the reason why I have Luka at number 3 is because just the whole being he's Brady since birth, since like being a professional since 16, playing in the second best league in the world. And he is quoted saying it's easier to score in the NBA than in the Euro League. So to have that type of confidence to play against the best players in the world, I'm like, okay, you're in my top 3. And for him to do that as well, he's not just all talk. We all saw what he did against the Clippers with that game winner, but it's not just that in the regular season. He's very dominant. I wouldn't be surprised if he wins MVP within the next 2 years, either next season or the following season. And then Giannis, I know he's back-to-back MVPs. It's just the whole playoff thing. I just want him to do more in the playoffs, get to the Eastern Conference Finals. But I feel like he is up next. He did this thing when he was playing against the Lakers and LeBron. He crowned himself, even though it came to to bite him in the ass. But he is still, he's still a freak of nature, and he's the epitome of what this league is going to, just international play and how stellar it is now that the NBA is expanding in that range. And he's, leading the forefront in that. So that's why I have him at number 2. And LeBron at number 1. Look, I hated LeBron in the Heat. I hate the Lakers, blah, blah, blah. But like we always talk about in this podcast, I give credit where credit is due. LeBron is, if he wins another championship this year, goes back to back, he's the GOAT. Like there's no debate. Like I don't think anybody could have write a better I don't think anybody can write a better career than what LeBron went through in his career. Just he had so much hype coming in as a 17, 18-year-old, and to live every single expectation to this point, that just still hasn't been that. He just never slows down. For the love of God, please slow down at some point. Like you need to give the rest of the league a chance to get to the finals. It's just crazy. But he obviously, he puts billions of dollars into his body. But LeBron is LeBron. When he has the chosen one in his back and everything, like I believe it. And I hate LeBron, but that says a lot for me. But Jordan, what is your top 4?
Yep. So at 80 at 5, obviously. 4, I had Luka. It's like I kind of talked about with Steph.
I'm surprised you both put Luka higher than
me. Well, and I said with Steph, I said, he would be higher, but if you're going to be in my top 5, you got to be able to impact on both ends, unless you're freakishly special on one. And Luka is freakishly special on offense. We saw that throughout the whole regular season and the playoffs. I mean, he tried his best. And I think if Porzingis and him don't get hurt, that Clipper series is, I'm not going to say it would have been different, but it would have been a little different, maybe been more games. And I think Luka is on the cusp of something super special, and he's just phenomenal. And he's only going to get better. So I'm really excited to see what happens with him. Number 3, I have Giannis, who I had 2 last year. Just thought he dropped a little bit. I think he, kind of like with Siakam to an extent, how he got a little bit exposed. I think Giannis, we saw a little bit of that this year. Miami kind of exposed him a little bit. He needs to have something other than the drive, spin, and dunk, which, don't get me wrong, is effective like 85% of the time. But when it comes to crunch time in the playoffs and guys pack the paint, he's got to be a better shooter. He's got to have a couple more moves in his arsenal and be a little bit more. I'm not saying he's not a good passer, because he is. He obviously averages like 5 or 6 assists, but he needs to be, take notes from LeBron and those guys and Chris Paul, watch film about like where you can really set up your teammates without having to go one-on-one the whole time. And I look for him to get better. I'm not like worried about that. He's same thing as AD. He's entering his prime. He's the ultimate physical specimen. So I'm really excited to see what he does next year. I'm interested to see how he takes a second year of getting beat and falling short. Like that's supposed to harden you and make you better and make you work harder. So I expect to see that out of him, because he does care, right? We've seen that he does care a lot. And so I expect him to put in a lot of work this offseason. Number 2, that's where I have Kawhi. I had Kawhi 1 last year. I thought he was the best player in the playoffs. He led his team to the title. The belt was his, and I thought he still had it for most of the year, if we're being completely honest, even though he does miss some games, as Raj said. But I think, at the end of that, I thought once we got to the playoffs, like, hey, if he's going to continue to do his thing, and I think he still had a very good playoffs. I think, that Clippers blowing their 3-1 lead is overshadowing how good of a playoffs he had, because he still was, destructive on both ends as per usual. And I don't even think that last game was really his fault. I think he sensed that nobody else on his team was playing well, and he kind of pressed the issue. And if you look, nobody else on his team was playing well. Mm-hmm. So I expect him to be back next year. I think he's going to be just as good as ever and just plug along. And he won't say much to anybody, but he'll look it up and he's like, oh, he's got 26, 10, and 5 this game. And he's, just doing his thing. I'm interested to see how they come out. Clippers Lakers should really be a fun battle next year again. And then number one, same thing, kind of like with Henry. You got to give credit where credit's due. I had LeBron third after last year behind Giannis, and I was worried about how his body was going to hold up. I was worried about the chemistry with AD. I was worried about a lot of things, and LeBron did what he always does, and he kind of just plugged a lot of holes, and he led the league in assists, and he took a back seat to AD without taking a back seat to AD, which is weird, right? Like some nights he was like, yeah, AD, go ahead if you want to score 40. And then like against Denver in game 5, he was like, yeah, hey, I got this. Like, let me put up 38 and 16 for you. So I think it is, super impressive what he does with his body. He is super, super committed to taking care of his body, and that's what allows him to keep playing. So you really have to give him credit for that. And also the way he prepares, all the film he watches. I mean, he's one of the smartest players we've ever had in this game. And you show that, Raj always talks about the game ones being the LeBron figuring it out games. And boy, was I frustrated after each one of those game ones. But by the end, I was like, oh, if we lose this one, he's just going to figure it out next game. And he generally did. So the crown right now is his. The belt is his. I'm interested to see the 3 or 4 guys below try to fight for it next year. And I think it's going to be a real competitive season for that. Raj, what's your last 4 here?
Yeah, so I got Giannis at 4. The playoff falling apart thing was a big factor here, and to put like a 2-time MVP, back-to-back MVP at the 4 spot is strange. It felt strange to do that, but I just didn't feel comfortable putting him above these top 3 guys. But he did, he did put up historical numbers. Whether or not you want to kind of buy in to the reality of those numbers, that's another situation. But like on paper, those were historical numbers, so you have to appreciate that, and you have to respect it for what it is. My 3 and 2, and I understand what you guys were saying with the injuries and whatnot. I kind of came into the situation anticipating that with all the time off that they've had, they're going to be as close to as good as they've been like in the past couple seasons. And I believe you both mentioned it, that like with the KD and all that, like we saw him like the sort of player that he was before those injuries happened, and that was sort of peak KD. Those Golden State teams were good because of a lot of the players, but KD was definitely the best player. So I have Steph at 3 and KD at 2. I mean, Steph, we've talked about it plenty. Like, he changed the game in terms of the way that people interpret like the 3 ball and all that kind of stuff, obviously, because, everybody's shooting threes, but also like the thing that I hone in on every single time is the fact that the way defense is played now is not the way defense was played a couple of years ago before Steph sort of hit his prime. And we're going to see Steph sort of take a step up here, I think, because he did take a backseat to KD. And not only that, but like when Steph won those MVPs, he was surrounded by a lot of good role players. Now it's him, Clay, and Draymond, and maybe Wiggins. Like, we'll have to wait and see what happens there with Wiggins. But like, him and Clay are going to be handling a lot of that load, because I don't think Draymond is even the player that he was a few years ago. And whether or not the team is up here the way they were in the past few years, I imagine that Steph is going to be back to that MVP caliber playing. So that's kind of what I'm anticipating out of him. And with KD, I mean, like, that guy is he's a monster. He's completely ridiculous. He's just so smooth, unfazed by anything. Like, if you look at the way that Kawhi doesn't have the personality that KD has, but in terms of like play style and whatnot, like, they're never phased. Nothing gets in their way. Nothing stops them from getting to the basket or getting their shot or whatever they want to do on the floor. There's no stopping them when it comes to that. And KD, I would agree with Jordan in those couple of years where he was leading those Warriors teams. He was better than LeBron in those years. It was obvious, and he won the championship and very much fairly so. The injury, is kind of what put him at the number 2 spot a little bit for me. But, obviously it's got to be LeBron at 1. I don't think there's any questioning at this point. Like, he can turn it on and off or whatever he wants to do. I've talked enough about LeBron. I don't need to spend any more time on it. In these last couple minutes here, let's kind of open it up to discussion for these top 4 picks. Do either of you want to call anybody out, throw anybody under the bus, or commend anybody for either of the picks that was made? Anybody got
I mean, Raj and his, Raj and his Anthony Davis pick way up there, which I think also.
I said top four. Let's leave the rest of it out of this
There's
conversation.
no rules here. And what we can do too is, if you guys want to send me like on Twitter, like just text me your like the picks in order, and I'll like maybe we can get like a graphic or something with them, just so we can put them out there so everyone kind of see. I'm a visual person, so I need to like see the list before I really judge them. But
you want that tangible proof that I put 80 in.
I just want that. Yeah, I want that bulletin board material for next year. But no, I mean, it's like I said at the beginning. It's really tough, right? We have all these different ways to evaluate players now, and we all have all of our biases and our preferences as to what we like. So I think it's tough to kind of all, it would be impossible for the same three people to have the same list. And these guys are really in reality separated by, it's slim margins, right? It's a little bit here, it's a little bit there. So it'll be interesting to see, what happens going into this next season, with, now the Lakers have a target on their back. Like, how's LeBron and AD going to respond? Giannis, like I said, Giannis back-to-back playoff failures. Is that going to harden him? Kawhi had the embarrassing, whether it's his fault or not, has been part of that embarrassing 3-1 blown lead. So what's he going to do? Luka's supposed to take another step forward, and then you have the injuries. There's so many different storylines with each player. It's not the same with each one, which I think is really interesting. It makes it all the more fun. And it's, knock on wood, you just hope that everybody that we have here stays healthy. You want to see a league with all these stars playing, right? I want to see Durant back. I want to see Curry back. So I hope that everyone's back. I hope that everyone's healthy, and I hope that it's just as competitive as a season, as it ever is.
Yeah, Henry, any closing thoughts?
No, yeah, same thing that Jordan said. I just really hope that everybody can stay healthy, because imagine a bubble with KD, Kyrie, and Steph Curry. Like, yeah, that's something we didn't get, but it just makes you think like, wow, we had some of the biggest names in basketball missing in the most historic time, in the NBA. So it just goes to show, like, now they're coming back and everything. Hopefully, health also for young players like Zion. Like, hopefully he stays healthy and he can play a full season so we can fully see what he's capable of. Same thing for John Morant. Colin Sexton, Darius Garland, all those guys. But
wow, I didn't give a cap shout out this episode. That's impressive.
But I'm just excited to see. Honestly, I'm just excited to see this next generation that's coming up, especially these next 5 years. It's gonna be the best basketball we're gonna see in our entire lives, to date, obviously. But it's just gonna overshadow anything. Like, okay, yeah, the old heads are always talking about the '90s and everything. Yes, had some of the best players. But if you do look at the highlights, like, these guys would completely annihilate those guys. Like, it's not even a question. But so I'm looking forward to it. Hopefully, there's injuries even in the NFL. Odell Beckham Jr., Saquon Barkley both tore their ACL, so it's part of the game in whatever facet. But I'm just looking forward to it. We gave a Cav shout out, but I want to give Raj a shout out because it's his birthday too. So happy birthday to Raj.
Appreciate it.
Happy birthday. But,
he gets one full free day without a ton of criticism, and then we're back at it tomorrow. We took it easy on him today.
But that's my closing thoughts.
I appreciate it, sir. It's this season, like, it feels like every season we're like, how can it kind of live up to the previous season? And this season, kind of, even though we had a break and we had the whole bubble situation, like, the basketball was as good as it's ever been, if not better. And it's just like, I'm hoping that it continues to take those steps. We'll have to see what the break or whatever, however long these guys have off, if that impacts the way they play next season. That's going to be a whole part of it. But I'm expecting top tier play. And to what Henry said, like, yeah, I mean, like, you look sort of outside this top 10 at the younger guys and the other guys that are looking right inside. Like, there's just so much pressure being put on this top 10 to, like, even, to be even in the conversation of this top 10 in anybody's sort of books, I think is commendable. And for these groups of players, like, we were pretty consistent. Like, we had most of the same guys throughout, just like one or two guys that didn't quite overlap on all three of the lists. But, like, it's a testament to just how good these guys are that they rose to that much higher a level than the other guys that are on the outside looking in. And I think that it's shaping up to be just, an incredible era of basketball. And I hope that it does continue into next season. We'll have to wait and see. that was a long episode, but that'll bring us to a close for this one. Thanks everybody for joining us. That was actually a lot of fun. Thanks to Jordan for kind of bringing up that idea in our group discussions a while back. We're not sure exactly what the idea is going to be for next week, so just tune in on Monday at the same time. Find our merch store, Team NBS merch, or go to Bonfire and search it. I think Jordan's about to drop it here in the comments. I could see him pulling up something.
I don't have it. Sorry, I was looking for that. My bad.
I just called you out. You can find all our social medias down there. Find Nuts and Bolts Sports on all social media as well as on our website. And we'll be back here next